Homeless boy yells, "Don't eat that." A millionaire freezes upon learning the reason. A light drizzle fell on the bustling city, slicking the sidewalks as a sleek black limousine pulled up to an upscale restaurant on Montgomery Street. Emerging from the car was Maxwell Stanton, renowned for his multi-million-dollar tech ventures and recently featured in Forbes, his every move a fascination to onlookers. Across the road, a tiny figure in ragged clothes stared intently at him. Suddenly, just as Maxwell was about to take his first bite of a lavish meal, the boy yelled at the top of his lungs, "Don't eat that." That jarring cry, echoing through the night air, would change both of their lives forever. The city never truly slept. Cars zoomed by at all hours, pedestrians hustled to their next destinations, and neon signs buzzed overhead. In a darkened alley off the well-lit Montgomery Street, 12-year-old Tobias Toby James was crouched behind a rusted dumpster, listening to the persistent patter of rain. The stench of old garbage and the gloom of his circumstances weighed on him. But Toby refused to believe that the cramped alley was the end of the line for him. Toby's mother had passed away 2 years ago, stage 4 cancer that had robbed her of life as swiftly as it had come. His father had died long before that in an industrial accident. Shuffled through a failing foster care system, Toby chose the streets over misery in a string of homes that never lasted. Despite everything, he somehow clung to hope. By day, he roamed the city looking for odd jobs, sweeping a diner's floor, cleaning windshields at traffic lights, delivering newspapers. By night, he slipped back into his hidden spot. Sometimes he dreamt of a life beyond the cardboard boxes and battered suitcases that dotted his turf. One evening, while rummaging through an overturned trash bin for anything remotely edible, Toby came across a half-torn magazine page. It featured a man in a tailored navy blue suit, flanked by world-famous investor Warren Buffett and Microsoft founder Bill Gates. The caption read, "Maxwell Stanton, the tech billionaire shaking up Silicon Valley." Toby stared at the photograph until the street lamp overhead flickered, then shut off completely. He kept the magazine scrap, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his pocket as a symbol maybe. If good fortune ever found him, it would come with a crisp, well-tailored suit and a kind, warm smile like that man in the picture. The rain pounded harder now, each drop echoing in the desolate alley. Toby, exhausted from yet another day of fruitless wandering, bundled up in his worn hoodie. He tried to settle on a piece of flattened cardboard, but the squealing of tires jerked him upright. A limousine glided to a stop at the curb in front of the high-end restaurant across the street, known for its exclusivity and 5-star chef imported from Paris. Toby recognized the place La Bijou. Rich folks in diamonds and expensive suits came here to dine on things that cost more than a month's rent in a decent apartment. From the limo emerged a man Toby immediately recognized from the magazine clipping. It was Maxwell Stanton. There he was in the flesh, hair impeccably styled, stance exuding unwavering confidence. Cameras flashed from a few opportunistic paparazzi who had tailed him. A group of star-struck diners waiting for their own reservations whispered in excitement as Maxwell nodded graciously at them. It felt surreal to Toby, seeing that face in real life after having stared at it on a torn magazine page in his pocket. For a fleeting second, Toby's hunger vanished, replaced by a surge of curiosity. He watched Maxwell Stanton enter the restaurant and vanish behind heavy wooden doors that only admitted CIPs and those with reservations booked months in advance. Toby moved closer, skirting around well-dressed valets, trying to peer through the frosted glass. A growl in his stomach reminded him of why he was out there. In the cold, he couldn't eat a photograph, no matter how glamorous the subject. Hesitating, Toby glanced around. The line at the restaurant was guarded by staff who would never let someone like him inside. Relegated once more to his viewpoint among the shadows, Toby found himself wishing he could see just a bit more. Of the lavish dining room, of the man who radiated an otherworldly aura that Toby found both intimidating and enthralling. Little did he know that curiosity and a deep pang of empathy would collide in a single, life-altering moment. In less than an hour, Toby would tear through the glass doors, yelling words that might save more than one life and unravel decades of secrets in the process. Maxwell Stanton was not born into wealth. He often regaled interviewers with the story of how he'd grown up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in Boston, raised by a single mother who juggled 2 jobs just to keep the power on. After winning a scholarship to MIT, Maxwell soared academically, building a tech startup straight out of his dorm room. That company, Orion Wave, disrupted the marketplace with its revolutionary cloud computing software and made him a millionaire by 23. A few wise investments in Tesla and other rising tech giants catapulted him into the realm of billionaires by 30. But success came with a price. Over the years, Maxwell faced lawsuits from disgruntled ex-partners, headlines linking his name to questionable deals in the race for market dominance, and an engagement that ended in heartbreak when the tabloids caught his fiancée having an affair with a European aristocrat. Despite personal upheavals, Maxwell continued forging ahead, focusing intently on his business empire. Yet behind closed doors, Maxwell carried guilt, a sense of never being able to repay the sacrifices his mother had made. She had died shortly after his initial success, never getting to live the life of comfort he dreamed of giving her. Unable to shake that regret, Maxwell had immersed himself in philanthropic efforts. He was a benefactor to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and a frequent collaborator with philanthropic circles that included the likes of Oprah Winfrey and Tim Cook. However, it always felt like a band-aid over a far deeper wound. That night at La Bijou, Maxwell was there for a private fundraiser. His father's longtime friend, Gregory Linwood, was orchestrating an event to raise money for a local children's hospital. Maxwell had hesitated to attend, feeling the weight of deadlines for his next product launch. But something, perhaps an unacknowledged longing for a sense of genuine community, convinced him to come. Surrounded by donors who fawned over him, Maxwell found himself having to smile and be gracious. Though the entire affair felt hollow, he'd taken his seat at a reserved table near the window. The server, noticing that Maxwell had hardly touched his food, asked if everything was to his liking. He nodded absently and waved the waiter away. Outside, Toby hovered near the front doors, heart pounding in his chest. He could see Maxwell just beyond the glass, head inclined toward some older gentleman in a crisp tuxedo. Toby was used to being invisible, but the hostess at the door gave him a glare sharp enough to cut steel. With a deep breath, Toby vanished back into the alley, disappointed that his short glimpse of this larger-than-life man had ended. The charity dinner ended sooner than expected. Press and potential donors lingered, wanting to speak with Maxwell. Outside the front entrance, black town cars lined up. Maxwell's driver, James Follett, who had been with him since the early Orion Wave days, was already waiting by the limousine. Maxwell stepped out amid polite applause from the staff and a few cameras that wanted a closing shot of the night's star attendee. However, Maxwell's phone buzzed with an urgent call from his CFO. Instead of sliding into the limo, Maxwell walked a few steps away toward an empty corner near a side alley. Phone pressed to his ear. "Look, Adrian, I understand. The market's shifting. If the licensing deal with Omnitech collapses, I'll personally see to bridging the gap in overhead. No, we're not scrapping the project." His voice was calm, but laced with tension. It was Orion Wave's biggest product unveiling in years. If they failed, he might lose billions in market value. "Yes, I'll look at the proposals in the morning." Hanging up, Maxwell let out a weary sigh. The smell of sweet pastries from a neighboring cafe wafted over, blending with the city's usual medley of exhaust fumes and street food. At that moment, perhaps to soothe himself, or simply because he realized he hadn't eaten much, Maxwell glanced at a nearby stall selling roasted chestnuts and steaming bowls of spiced chowder. It was an odd sight, a small, family-owned kiosk operating past midnight. Drawn by the warmth of the stall's lights, Maxwell decided to indulge in something that reminded him of simpler times. "Chestnuts, sir?" asked the stall owner, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands. "They're fresh. I'll take a bag of those," Maxwell answered, forcing a smile. "And that chowder smells great. I'll have a bowl." The woman beamed. She served him quickly, obviously recognizing who he was, but too polite or perhaps too tired to make a big fuss. Maxwell fished out $100 bill and insisted she keep the change, which she accepted with a hesitant but grateful nod. Clutching the warm paper cup and the small bag of chestnuts, Maxwell turned to walk back toward the limo. He passed a row of parked cars along the side alley, every shadow flickering under the dim streetlights. Before he could take his first bite, he heard footsteps light, swift. He turned around just as a small figure burst from behind the dumpsters, eyes wide with alarm. "Don't eat that!" the boy shrieked, voice echoing off the walls. Startled, Maxwell froze. 1,000 questions thundered through his mind. Who was this kid? Why was he yelling? Toby, panting with exertion, could barely get the words out. "Don't eat that. It's gone bad or something. They put something in it." For a moment, Maxwell thought he was being shaken down by a street kid with a questionable tactic. But the raw fear etched on the boy's face was too vivid, too real to dismiss. Maxwell stared at Toby in disbelief. Who put something in it? The boy was trembling. Water from the rain dripped down his brow, and his oversized hoodie clung to his skinny frame. He glanced back at the kiosk, then at Maxwell's bag and cup. The guy who was there before, I saw him swap the pot. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. "You're saying someone tampered with the food?" Toby nodded vigorously, still breathing hard. He went behind the kiosk before the lady came back. He had a little bottle, poured something in the chowder pot. "I was right there. He didn't see me, but I saw him. Then he left quick." Maxwell glanced down at the steaming bowl. A creeping sense of dread replaced his hunger. Could the boy be telling the truth? It seemed improbable, but the sense of urgency in Toby's voice was impossible to ignore. He looked around for the kiosk owner, but she was busy closing up. If Toby was telling the truth, this was more than an accident. Somebody had deliberately tried to poison the food. "Stay here," Maxwell said. He walked back to the stall, leaving Toby in the alley. Toby, anxious, hovered nearby. When Maxwell questioned the woman at the kiosk, she looked at him with confusion. "I was away for a minute to grab more cups from the storage next door. My husband was supposed to watch the pot, but he left to use the restroom. I didn't see anyone else." Heart pounding now, Maxwell realized the entire scenario was too bizarre to ignore. He thought about the numerous enemies he'd acquired in business, the unscrupulous deals that left bitter ex-partners simmering with resentment. Who would do such a thing? And why here, at a random kiosk on the street? He thanked the woman who was perplexed by his strange questions. Walking back toward Toby, Maxwell noticed the boy was stepping from one foot to the other as if debating whether to flee. Maxwell knelt to his level. "You saved me from making a serious mistake, if what you say is true," he said quietly. "Thank you." Toby shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. I didn't want you to die or get hurt." "Why me?" Maxwell asked. "You don't even know me." Toby pulled out the magazine clipping from his pocket. It was wrinkled and stained, but the photo of Maxwell Stanton was still recognizable. "I know who you are. You don't look like a bad person. I've been following your story. You're like me, from a place where you had nothing. Emotion struck Maxwell in an unexpected wave. The boy clearly idolized him. Maxwell glanced at the chowder in his hand and felt a chill run through his veins. Suddenly it occurred to him that Toby's life on the street was precarious. Was he safe even now? And how did Toby come to be in that alley at precisely the right moment? Before Maxwell could ask, Toby's eyes darted past him, looking at something in the shadows. Maxwell spun around, but saw only the flicker of a figure slipping away behind a corner. And just like that, the threads of a conspiratorial tapestry began to form in Maxwell's mind. "Where do you live?" Maxwell asked Toby, though he suspected the answer. The boy just lowered his gaze. "Nowhere. Do you have any family?" Toby shook his head. "Not anymore." An unusual surge of protectiveness filled Maxwell. "You're coming with me." Toby took a step back. "I what? I can't." "Listen," Maxwell said, voice firm but kind. "We need to figure out what happened tonight. If you're telling the truth, I need answers. And if you stay here, that person, whoever tampered with the food, might come back looking for you." He wasn't entirely sure if that was true, but the boy's safety seemed precarious. Maxwell also knew that Toby might have more information he wasn't yet comfortable revealing. The idea of leaving him on the street after such a harrowing moment felt unconscionable. Toby bit his lip, wrestling with the fear of stepping into a world completely alien to him. But the memory of that stranger pouring something sinister into the chowder pot lingered in his mind. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. With a gentle hand on Toby's shoulder, Maxwell guided him toward the waiting limousine. James, the driver, looked at the unexpected guest with curiosity, but said nothing. Maxwell slipped Toby inside, then followed. The doors closed with a soft thud, sealing them in an opulent cabin. Leather seats, tinted windows, and the faint scent of cologne enveloped them. Toby seemed afraid to even rest his back against the seat, as though expecting at any moment to be told he wasn't allowed. Maxwell pressed a button to roll down the partition between them and the driver. "James," Maxwell said calmly, "we have a change of plan. No heading straight home. First, we need to speak with my head of security. There's an incident we need to investigate." James nodded. "Understood, sir." The car rolled into motion, and Toby stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. Maxwell studied Toby's face, pale, with bruises under his eyes suggesting chronic exhaustion, lips chapped from the cold. He felt a pang of guilt, thinking of the fortune he possessed while a child lived in an alley, scrounging for scraps. He remembered the times his mother had told him, "There's always someone out there who needs your help, Max. Don't forget where you came from." Those words resonated now more than ever. They arrived at Orion Tower, Maxwell's corporate headquarters. Over 30 stories of steel and glass, it was a testament to his achievements, a monument that dwarfed the surrounding buildings in both height and stature. Security lights illuminated the lobby as James parked in a restricted zone. Toby gawked at the marble floors, the sleek reception desk, and the giant digital art installations. It was well past midnight, yet Maxwell's personal security staff remained on call. Maxwell led Toby to the elevator, scanning a keycard that granted them access to the top floors. At the executive suite, they were greeted by a tall, stoic man in a tailored suit, William Bill Harrigan, Maxwell's head of security. "You're here late, Mr. Stanton." Bill's eyebrows lifted at the sight of Toby. "Is everything all right?" "We have a situation," Maxwell said. Then he recounted what had happened by the kiosk, the possible tampering, Toby's intervention, and the person Toby had spotted lurking around. Bill listened intently, taking notes. Toby fiddled with his hoodie strings, looking uncomfortable in the glass-walled office. He noticed a sleek painting of Maxwell shaking hands with Bill Gates from a charity conference a few years back, and a photo of Maxwell attending a forum with Jeff Bezos. The images felt surreal to Toby, who minutes ago had been rummaging for food in a trash can. "It could be an attempt on your life," Bill concluded grimly once the story was told. "We can't discount that possibility. We've had threats before, but this is new territory." Maxwell nodded. "Review the surveillance feeds from around La Bijou, check for any unusual activity at that kiosk or its surroundings over the last few hours." Bill signaled to an assistant who hastened to a nearby workstation. "We have remote access to city cameras. If they were facing the right direction, we can try to identify the suspect." Maxwell turned to Toby. "When was the last time you ate something substantial?" Toby shrugged. "I found a half-eaten sandwich earlier in the day." "Let's get you something from the staff kitchen," Maxwell said softly. "Then we'll see about getting you some dry clothes." A quiet flush of relief crossed Toby's features. At that moment, all the glitz and glamour of Maxwell's world receded into the background. The boy was starving. An hour later, Toby was in a small lounge adjacent to Maxwell's office. He had devoured a plate of leftover pasta and a warm cup of cocoa. Someone from the security team had found a spare set of sweats way too big, but better than his drenched hoodie. Maxwell observed him from the doorway, arms folded. Something about the boy tugged at him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Perhaps Toby represented a raw version of his own past. A voice in Maxwell's head chided him to remain cautious, but his heart overruled that caution. Toby glanced over, self-conscious. "Thanks for this." Maxwell gave a faint smile. "I owe you a lot more, Toby. You might saved my life." A flicker of pride and sadness fluttered across Toby's face. "People don't usually believe me about anything." "I believe you," Maxwell said, and the weight of that statement settled in the air. "Tomorrow, we'll see if we can confirm your story with the security footage. And if you're comfortable, I'd like to hear more about how you got here, living on the street." Toby nodded, though the idea of rehashing his painful story made his throat tighten. He tried to change the subject. "I read about your charity stuff. My mum used to say if we ever made it big, we'd do the same. Help people." Maxwell's smile faltered. "She sounds like she was a good person. The best," Toby whispered, tears threatening to spill. "Cancer took her. Dad was gone before that. Fell in a factory accident. And the Fosters, well, that didn't work out." Maxwell's eyes hardened with empathy. He made a mental note to investigate Toby's background through proper channels. But for now, the boy needed comfort. "You're safe here," he said at last. Morning arrived with a flurry of phone calls, urgent emails, and a hurricane of corporate demands. Maxwell, clad in a fresh suit, rushed through the corridors of Orion Tower. Toby followed, wearing the same oversized sweats, feeling awkward as staff members whispered, or tried not to stare too obviously at the curious sight of a homeless boy walking beside their billionaire boss. Bill Harrigan intercepted Maxwell. "Sir, we have some developments. The city surveillance cameras caught a glimpse of a man in a dark hoodie near the kiosk's cooking station. He was carrying a small bottle and left in a hurry." Maxwell's jaw tightened. "Have we identified him?" Bill nodded. "Facial recognition gave us a partial match. He's a known associate of Ivan Kroshkin, a business rival you clashed with last year over that data analytics contract in Eastern Europe. You remember?" The memory hit Maxwell like a punch to the gut. Ivan was a ruthless competitor who had once threatened Maxwell with a lawsuit over patent issues. "So it's not some random sabotage," Maxwell muttered. "He's targeting me specifically." Bill exhaled. "Seems likely. We should be careful. The poison used could have harmed more than just you if other customers had eaten that chowder." "He's crossing new lines," Maxwell nodded. "Contact the authorities. Press charges if we have enough evidence. Meanwhile, double my personal security." Already in motion, Bill said, before stepping aside to answer a call. Toby, who had overheard the exchange, felt a twinge of terror. "So you really were the target," he murmured. "And I." Maxwell placed a reassuring hand on Toby's shoulder. "Yes. And you saved me." "You might have saved others too. I promise, Toby, we'll make sure nothing like this happens again." Toby tried to smile, but the enormity of the situation weighed on him. He looked out through the glass walls at the city skyline, a tumult of conflict swirling in his heart, fear of becoming entangled in something dangerous, relief that he'd done the right thing, and a faint glimmer of hope that maybe Maxwell Stanton could change his life for the better. But Toby had learned, in painful ways, that good fortune could vanish in an instant. Later that day, Maxwell made an executive decision. He'd have Toby stay at his penthouse for the next few nights, at least until the police concluded their investigation, and it was safe to let Toby go about his life, if that was what Toby wanted. Discreetly, Maxwell placed a call to a trusted friend, Dr. Evelyn Marsh, who specialized in counseling at a local youth center. She arranged for Toby to receive a basic health check and provided advice on next steps. Maxwell's penthouse occupied the top floor of an exclusive high-rise overlooking the bay. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a private terrace with an infinity pool, and modern minimalist decor all spoke of a life drastically removed from Toby's experiences. When Toby stepped inside, he moved as though afraid to dirty the immaculate marble floors. Maxwell guided him to a guest bedroom bigger than any room Toby had ever called his own. "You can stay here. The bathroom's through that door. If you need anything, just let me know." Toby set the small bag of borrowed clothes on the bed, eyes scanning the space king-sized mattress, plush carpets, a gigantic flat-screen TV on the wall. "This is all for me?" Maxwell nodded. "I know it's a bit overwhelming. Take your time, make yourself at home." Once alone, Toby explored the suite, opening drawers, discovering crisp linens and brand-new towels. Everything smelled like sandalwood and expensive fabric softener. A swirl of emotions overcame him, gratitude, awe, and also a strange sense of displacement. Could he ever truly belong in a place like this? Or was it all just a temporary dream? That evening, Maxwell sat with Toby in the penthouse's living room. Modern sculptures and abstract paintings by celebrated artists lined the walls. Toby sipped on a glass of juice, feeling small amid such refined luxury. "You never told me much about your parents," Maxwell said gently. "What were they like?" Toby's gaze dropped to his feet. "Dad worked in a factory that made car parts. He used to talk about how one day he'd make something new that everyone would want. Mom was a waitress. She always smiled, no matter what. Said she had to stay strong for me." "Sounds like they both had big hearts," Maxwell said softly. "And after they were gone, you ended up on the street?" Toby nodded. "Yeah, the Fosters. Well, some were okay, but I didn't fit in. I ran away from a couple. Maybe they reported me as missing, maybe not. After a while, it just felt easier to be on my own." Anger and sadness warred within Maxwell. How many children like Toby were slipping through society's cracks? The system was supposed to protect them, but Toby's life was a testament to how easily the system could fail. Maxwell inhaled deeply. "I'm sorry you had to go through all that." Toby gave a weak shrug. "It's okay. I survived." They lapsed into a silence heavy with unspoken pain. Maxwell recalled his own childhood days of scraping by, living on discount groceries and the occasional leftover his mother brought home from her cleaning jobs at offices. He'd tasted poverty, but he'd never been truly homeless. The difference between Toby's experience and his own was stark, a cruel reflection of society's inequalities. Maxwell placed a hand gently on Toby's shoulder. "You don't have to just survive anymore. Let's figure out a way for you to thrive." Morning brought new challenges. The press had gotten wind of an incident involving Maxwell Stanton. Speculative headlines sprang up in tabloids and on social media. Maxwell Stanton, almost poisoned. Billionaire targeted in deadly plot. Who saved Stanton? Rumors point to a mystery boy. Maxwell's public relations team scrambled to control the narrative, issuing a brief statement that Maxwell was cooperating with law enforcement regarding an incident of food tampering. No mention of Toby's involvement was made at Maxwell's insistence. He wanted to protect Toby from the media frenzy. The moment Toby's name got out, a swarm of reporters and paparazzi would descend, further traumatizing a boy who'd had enough trauma for a lifetime. Meanwhile, Maxwell's security team confirmed that the man who had tampered with the chowder was indeed a known associate of Ivan Kroshkin. The police launched an investigation into potential attempted murder charges. Kroshkin, predictably, denied any involvement, calling the allegations baseless slander in a scathing press release. Maxwell steeled himself for a possible legal war. Amid the chaos, Toby underwent a medical checkup and found out, to his relief, that he was relatively healthy, though malnourished. Dr. Marsh visited him briefly at the penthouse, discussing the idea of therapy and the possibility of stable housing. "I'm not sending you back out there," Maxwell told Toby one afternoon when Toby asked if he'd have to leave soon. "We'll find a better solution. Maybe we can reconnect you with a safe foster family, or if you're open to it, I can sponsor you so you can attend a good school." Toby swallowed hard. "You'd do that for me? You saved my life," Maxwell replied. "And even if you hadn't, I can't turn my back on you. Not now." Toby felt tears prickling his eyes, but he blinked them away. For years he'd thought only of surviving day to day. Now, for the first time, he was confronted with the possibility that someone genuinely cared about his future. As the days passed, Maxwell discovered that opening his life to Toby was both uplifting and profoundly challenging. Toby was unaccustomed to rules and routines. He spoke with a streetwise edge, and though Maxwell tried not to show it, some of Toby's survival tactics like shoplifting small items came as a shock. Toby sheepishly admitted he was used to stealing to get by. Maxwell gently but firmly told him that such habits had to stop. One evening, Toby had a nightmare. He screamed in his sleep, "Don't eat that!" Maxwell rushed to the guest room, finding Toby drenched in sweat, eyes wide with terror. Toby admitted he'd had recurring dreams since the night he saved Maxwell, haunted by the idea that next time he might be too late. Maxwell wondered if Toby's fear was also tied to deeper guilt, perhaps, about not being able to save his mother. The weight of unspoken traumas weighed on Toby's shoulders like a boulder. In a bid to lighten Toby's world, Maxwell took him to a baseball game front row seats at the local stadium. The boy's eyes shone as the crowd cheered. Hot dogs were passed around, and the home team won in a nail-biting finale. After the game, Maxwell introduced Toby to the star pitcher, courtesy of a VIP connection. The pitcher patted Toby on the back, gave him an autographed glove. For a few hours, Toby was just a kid, living an impossible dream. But the return to Maxwell's penthouse was marred by a sinister surprise. A threatening note slipped under the door. "You think you can escape justice? There's more than one way to skin a cat, IK." The initials were unmistakable. Fear roiled in Maxwell's stomach. If Kroshkin was this brazen, Toby could be in danger just for being near Maxwell. Unable to remain passive, Maxwell arranged a meeting with Kroshkin's legal representatives, demanding they rein in their client's criminal actions. The meeting was tense and fruitless, with Kroshkin's lawyers disclaiming any wrongdoing on his behalf and threatening a counter-lawsuit for defamation if Maxwell persisted in baseless accusations. Back at the penthouse, Bill Harrigan insisted on added security measures. Toby, now given a passkey for the elevator, was instructed never to leave without a guard. Toby felt suffocated, but understood the dangers. For Maxwell, who had spent years fending off malicious attacks in the business world, It was just another day, though. It was the first time an enemy had stooped so low as to target him in public. The knowledge that Toby could be collateral damage spurred Maxwell's protective instincts. In the swirl of legal threats and media speculation, Maxwell found solace in Toby's presence. The boy's resilience and budding trust reminded Maxwell of something more important than corporate success: the ability to shape a life for the better. Every day, Toby became more at ease laughing at silly jokes, showing Maxwell how to do card tricks he'd learned on the streets, even trying his hand at the penthouse's high-tech kitchen appliances. And every day, Maxwell was reminded of his mother's words, "Don't forget where you came from." Toby could have been him if just a few circumstances had been different. It was a crisp Sunday morning when Maxwell decided to visit a local charity event supporting homeless youth. Toby accompanied him, wearing new clothes, nothing flashy, just a simple pair of jeans and a jacket. The event took place in a community center downtown, an open space filled with volunteers, donated supplies, and kids who looked a lot like Toby had only a week ago. At the entrance, Maxwell introduced Toby to Morgan Hill, a philanthropic representative from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Morgan recognized Toby from Maxwell's guarded references. "So, you're the young man who saved a billionaire's life," Morgan teased gently, shaking Toby's hand. Toby flushed, unaccustomed to positive attention. Over the next few hours, Toby helped distribute food and sought clothing donations. He chatted with other kids, forging quick connections over shared experiences of sleeping on benches, scrounging for meals. Maxwell observed from a distance, heart swelling with both pride and sorrow for all the children who lacked a stable home. Midway through the event, Toby noticed a girl about his age, small and timid, who was clutching a worn teddy bear. She reminded him of a younger version of himself. He handed her a toy from the donation bin, a puzzle set, and encouraged her to give it a try. The girl's eyes sparkled. At that moment, Toby felt a rush of joy. He was no longer just the homeless boy. He was on the giving side, even in a small way. Maxwell caught the scene. He blinked back tears, seeing for the first time the difference one small shift in circumstances could make in a child's life. On the ride home, Toby was brimming with stories about the people he'd met, the courage they showed. The spark of compassion in Toby's eyes was enough to convince Maxwell that Toby's future was bright, if only they could keep him safe from the looming threats. As if on cue, the next day brought a dramatic development. The police arrested Kroshkin's associate, the very man captured on surveillance tampering with the chowder. Under interrogation, he revealed text messages from Kroshkin that pointed to a plan to neutralize Maxwell Stanton. Although Kroshkin had tried to mask his involvement through intermediaries, the digital trail was damning. Kroshkin went on the offensive, releasing statements that Maxwell was staging the entire plot to ruin Kroshkin's reputation. Some media outlets lapped up the controversy, peddling conspiracy theories. Maxwell's lawyers fought back with evidence. Tensions escalated, and the city watched, enthralled by the spectacle of two billionaires locked in a lethal dance. Amid the swirling chaos, Toby quietly thrived. He'd enrolled in a private tutoring program, something Maxwell arranged. He studied math, science, and literature with a voracious appetite, eager to make up for lost time. Dr. Marsh also conducted therapy sessions, helping Toby process his grief and fear. Despite these positive steps, Maxwell felt a growing dread. Kroshkin was a cornered beast, dangerous and desperate. Late one evening, as Maxwell worked in his home office, Toby asleep in his guest room, Maxwell's phone buzzed. Bill Harrigan's voice crackled through the speaker. "Sir, we have credible intel that Kroshkin's men might attempt something tonight." Maxwell's stomach churned. "What are we looking at? Possibly a break-in, possibly more." We've locked down the building. Local police are on standby outside. Maxwell walked to Toby's room. The boy was fast asleep, breath slow and steady. For the second time in a month, Maxwell was reminded how fragile life could be and how a single stroke of misfortune could shatter everything. He vowed not to let Toby be harmed by the vendetta of a ruthless rival. At 2:47 a.m., alarms blared through the penthouse. Toby jolted upright, heart pounding. Maxwell, already awake, rushed to Toby's room. "We're okay," he said, trying to sound calm over the shrieking sirens. "Just follow me." They hurried into the secure panic room, a fortified space concealed behind a mirrored panel in the hallway. With Bill Harrigan's help, Maxwell monitored the building's security cameras. 3 masked intruders had slipped into a service entrance. The police were already moving in. Time crawled. Toby's hands shook, the walls of the panic room pressing in on him. He'd never felt more helpless, hidden away from a threat he couldn't see. Maxwell, though outwardly composed, seethed with rage that Kroshkin would dare an outright invasion. Over the radio, they heard the scuffle, officers cornering the intruders, gunshots echoing in the corridor. The entire ordeal lasted mere minutes, but to Toby, it felt like hours. Eventually, the sirens died down, replaced by the hum of frantic voices outside. Bill's voice crackled over the intercom. "It's safe, Mr. Stanton." "The intruders are apprehended. No casualties. Police have control." Maxwell breathed out a ragged sigh. He turned to Toby, who was pale with fear. "It's over." In the aftermath, Toby realized this was far bigger than some petty sabotage. Kroshkin was out for blood. Maxwell's life had never felt more precarious. Yet, ironically, Toby, once a lone figure rummaging through trash in an alley, now had someone determined to protect him at all costs. Public outrage soared after news broke that armed men, allegedly linked to Kroshkin, had tried to break into Maxwell Stanton's residence. Kroshkin vehemently denied the allegations, but the evidence against him piled up. He found himself in legal quicksand, indicted on charges that included conspiracy to commit murder. While that battle raged on, Maxwell turned his attention to Toby's formal guardianship. It wasn't easy. The foster system, the state, and child protective services all needed to be involved. But Maxwell and his team navigated the red tape, determined to secure Toby a stable environment free from bureaucratic nightmares. One sunny afternoon, as Toby returned from a tutoring session, Maxwell greeted him with a broad smile. "The judge just approved temporary guardianship," he said. Toby's eyes widened in astonishment. "You mean I get to stay here with you for as long as you want?" Maxwell replied, voice trembling with emotion. "We'll figure out the details over time, but for now, you're not going back to the streets." Toby flung his arms around Maxwell in a fierce hug. Maxwell felt a wetness on his shirt and realized Toby was crying, tears of relief. Life had been a relentless struggle for the boy, but now it seemed the tide was turning. Just weeks later, the final blow fell on Kroshkin. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, emails, phone records, and testimonies, he was arrested and denied bail, awaiting trial. His empire crumbled. Maxwell, having spent so many years fighting business battles, found a certain poetic justice in seeing his adversary undone, not by cunning corporate maneuvers, but by the moral stand of a homeless boy. The dust settled at last. Maxwell's life, though still hectic with corporate deadlines and philanthropic events, found a steady rhythm that included Toby's laughter, his comedic attempts at cooking, and late-night chats about everything from comic books to existential questions about life and destiny. One balmy evening, Maxwell and Toby strolled along the waterfront, the city lights casting rippling reflections on the water's surface. Toby kicked a pebble, watching it skip into the dark waves. "I still can't believe I'm here," Toby said softly. "A month ago, I was in a dumpster. Now I have a bedroom with 1,000 pillows." Maxwell chuckled. "I may have gone overboard with the pillows." They walked in companionable silence for a moment, the cool breeze carrying distant laughter from couples enjoying the boardwalk. Toby took a deep breath. "Maxwell, thanks. For everything. For believing me. For just giving me a chance." Maxwell wrapped an arm around Toby's shoulder. "You gave me something too," he said. "A reminder of who I was, and who I still want to be." Toby's face glowed with gratitude. In that fleeting moment, the world felt full of possibilities. Toby's future was not written in the grim lines of a city alley, but in the bright hope of second chances. 6 months later, the city was teeming with life as the summer sun shone high. Maxwell had just returned from an international conference in Geneva, where he spoke on ethical leadership in the tech industry. Toby was waiting at Orion Tower, having completed a volunteer shift at the youth center that Maxwell now funded more generously than ever. They met in the lounge area. Toby, now sporting a backpack with books, flashed a grin. "Hey, guess what? I got an A on my science test." Maxwell feigned an exaggerated expression of shock. "An A? That's incredible." Toby handed over the test paper, and Maxwell noticed a neatly scrawled note at the top from the tutor. "Remarkable improvement." "You know," Toby mused, "I was reading about computer programming." "It sounds pretty interesting." Maxwell's eyes lit up. "Well, you are living with a tech entrepreneur," he teased. "If you're serious, I can get you started with some beginner courses." Toby's nod was firm, determined. They both knew that the road ahead would still have its bumps. Healing from old scars would take time. Yet, they walked together down the glass hallway, side by side, forging a bond stronger than any blood tie. Maxwell Stanton, the boy from a humble background, had risen to dizzying heights, only to discover his greatest triumph wasn't the billions he'd earned or the accolades he'd received, but the life he'd saved. Toby's life, and the second chance they both found in each other. Outside the tower, they stepped into the sunlight, Toby squinting happily. A driver opened the car door. Toby climbed in, Maxwell following. As the car pulled away, a memory unspooled in Maxwell's mind, Toby rushing out that rainy night, screaming, "Don't eat that," in a voice that echoed with desperate urgency. The moment that had bound them forever was now just one chapter of a far greater story, a story of hope, redemption, and the powerful synergy of compassion and courage. They drove into the horizon, the city behind them glittering like a promise. Neither knew exactly what the future would hold, but they knew one thing for sure: they would face it together. What began as a desperate shout from a homeless boy on a rainy night turned into a testament to humanity's resilience and capacity for love. Toby's warning, "Don't eat that," saved billionaire Maxwell Stanton's life, yet, in many ways, Toby saved Maxwell's heart, reminding him of who he truly was at his core. Together, they unraveled a sinister plot, overcame unimaginable threats, and discovered the most powerful treasure of all: family can be formed by choice, bonded by courage, and solidified by hope. Their journey proves that a single act of selflessness can spark life-changing transformations. If you found Toby and Maxwell's story moving, please consider sharing this video. Give it a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss more inspiring tales. Your support helps us continue bringing stories of hope, compassion, and second chances to light. Thank you for watching.